This is a little video note, if you like, about knot selection, what kind of knots we use and what kind of ropes that we use them with. Generally, when I've been putting out videos, I have pretty much assumed that due to the kind of thing I do and the kind of people who are most likely to be watching my videos, and they're most likely to be watching them because of what I do, that they're going to be pretty much into the same style as me. They're going to be using pretty much the same kind of rope as me, certainly the same material rope as me, and they're going to be doing the shibari style. However, not all knots perform the same with all materials. So if you have extremely slippery rope, some knots that are used in the shibari style are not appropriate to be used with that rope. If you have extremely toothy rope, some knots which are specifically good with very shiny rope are not to be thought of. Sometimes I use knots that are deliberately weak in a certain direction because I know that I can then break that knot very easily when I want to break it, and I know that the way I'm tying, I'm going to use it in its strongest direction, but I'm going to be able to break it easily if that follows. This has come up because I had a couple of comments on videos recently suggesting that certain knots were collapsible or capsizable, or that they could be destroyed by putting pressure on them, and that therefore they were dangerous. I think it's important to remember that certain knots work better on certain different kinds of rope. If you've got a really, really slippery type of rope, some knots rely on internal friction in the knot in keeping them stable to a certain degree. And the less friction you have in that type of knot, the more unstable that knot would be. You wouldn't use the same kind of a knot to join two cables together as you would to join two pieces of fishing line together. There are many different knots, and they have many different purposes. But even ones with the same purpose might be good for different kinds of rope. And when I've put out tutorials, because I'm showing them with jute rope, because I tie them with jute rope, because the demonstration has jute rope, and the style that I tie in almost always has jute rope used as the preferred material, we have many different knots, many different properties to those knots, and you should just be cognizant of all of those different factors when you're deciding on a knot. And also the thickness of your rope makes a difference. So I think you need to take into account the type of rope. You need to take into account the thickness of that rope. You need to take into account the circumstances of use of that rope. You need to select your rope based on all the properties of the rope. You can't just use anything for anything. This is why we have different knots. We have different knots for different purposes. Some of them work better with different types of rope in different circumstances, and that's something that you should take into account. The point I would make is, unless you really understand a knot, you should probably not be using it. You should understand what the knot's good for, how the knot is strong, how the knot breaks, what materials it works best with. You should know why you're using the knots that you're using. If you don't, that's a hole in your knowledge that you want to fill in before you, for instance, hang somebody's life on it. That's, I hope I'm not laboring the obvious too much there. Thanks for watching. Cheers.